Today is Thursday, the 4th of June 2026. A pleasant good morning to you and welcome to your breakfast show. Good morning, Sierra Leone, the program that always starts your day with analysis and divergence of views on news and current happenings in the country. We are your presenters. I am Esther Sako.
And I am Emmanuel Samoa. We start with the quote. Our quote of the day is from American author Christopher Morley, and it says, "There is only one rule for being a good talker: listen to learn." I go over it again because some people, they just talk, they like talking. So this particular author is saying there is only one rule for being a very good talker: learn to listen.
That is deep.
It's deep.
So coming up in this edition of the program, 6 months on after her appointment, we find out how the first female MD of Salwako is faring on.
Ministry of Technical and Higher Education engages stakeholders on the implementation of centralized admissions system.
And the National Consumer Protection Council concludes stakeholders' engagement on the Consumer Protection Act 2020. Well, on this note, that's how we invite you to participate in the program by sending your text message to the number displayed on your screen or send your comments on our Facebook page, slbc.sl. The program is Good Morning Sierra Leone, live on the Sierra Leone Broadcasting Corporation. Stay with us.
Watching it Good Morning Sierra Leone live on the SLBC. While we start the conversation proper to a second headline story that has to do with education. The Ministry of Technical and Higher Education has held a high-level stakeholder engagement on the implementation of Sierra Leone's proposed centralized admissions system (CAS), bringing together university leaders, regulators, examination bodies, technology institutions, and government agencies. The consultation forms part of ongoing efforts to reform higher education admissions and establish a transparent, efficient, and equitable system for students seeking entry into tertiary institutions across the country. This current decentralized admissions process, according to the Minister of Higher Education, says has created inefficiencies due to the limited time between the release of WAS results and the commencement of academic programs. Under the proposed model, students would apply during their penultimate year of secondary school and receive conditional offers before sitting to their final examinations, with admissions later confirmed through an integrated digital platform linked to WAEC results system. Well, in the studio to talk more on this, we have been joined by Emmanuel J. Momo Esquire, the Director of Higher Education. Good morning and welcome to Good Morning.
Good morning, listeners. Good morning, viewers, and thanks for having me in the studio.
I believe I've given just a synopsis of what's system is all about. But I want you to really put it into context, because someone out there might be confused, saying that you have to apply in your penultimate before doing the final exam. Put it in context for us.
Yes, the Ministry of Technical Higher Education actually is the supervising ministry for all public universities and also even private universities, as provided for by the Universities Act of 2021. When you talk of admissions, actually, it is the responsibility of Senate, which is the highest academic decision-making body in the universities, as provided for in Section 18, subsection 1, paragraph B, that the Senate, it is the responsibility of Senate to regulate the admissions of persons into the university and for programs through the centralized admission systems. So that law has been there since the promulgation of the Universities Act of 2021. But then because of the numerous challenges faced by the universities in the admission processes, that is the reason why the Honorable Minister of Technical Higher Education actually sought cabinet approval, and that was secured. So now we have engaged with other partners in Nigeria. You know, what is it that they are doing in Nigeria is succeeding and then Sierra Leone is not succeeding. So we have this Joint Admissions Matriculation Board, JAM. So in Sierra Leone, we are saying we're going to have the CAS system, centralized admission systems. That's going to be domiciled at the Ministry of Technical Higher Education. We are not actually going to we're not doing it in silos. We're going to have engagement with the vice chancellors and principals and other stakeholders. Of course, because the vice chancellors and principals are the chairmen of their respective senate, that is the reason why they are fully on board this discussion. You know, the Honorable Deputy Minister of Technical Higher Education actually led a delegation, which are two vice chancellors to Nigeria, and then they have the discussion. Last week, Saturday, we were to Radisson Blue from a delegation from Nigeria, with a delegation from Nigeria, and then we continued our discussions, you know, as to how we're going to do it. Because you made mention of the fact that students will be admitted at their penultimate year. Yes, at secondary school, you know, we start actually having them now at SS2. SS2, they send their applications to the centralized admission systems. We start processing them so that we will not actually be be behind time actually in processing the applications form, because we have been having a bad experience in the sense that we cannot commence the academic year on time, you know, because it is we are all aware of the fact that universities are supposed to commence in October, but sometimes because of the delay, we go on to November, up to even December, up to January, because people take time to process application forms. Remember, we've been doing it manually, but we moved from the manual processing to digital processing. But even as that, there are challenges. So we actually, in addressing those challenges, we have decided to, employ the harmonize and digital method of processing application forms, you know, so that it cannot become burdensome on students. You know, you have to get to the bank, you have to come back to the university to process your form. So for us to do this, we have engagement with other bodies. The WAEC is on board. Of course, they were with us on Saturday at Radisson Blue. The chairman, conference of principals, and then the minister of basic and senior secondary education. We had NATCA on board, we have NACRA on board. I mean, all of those stakeholders. So they are on board, we have these discussions, you know. Yes. So,
Mr. Momo, how different will this central admission system be compared to the previous one we had? Because you made mention of there is already a system, we moved from manual to digital, and yet there were challenges.
Yes, that was actually done. Well, at present, what they are doing is at a university level. Now, at national level, right? So, they are doing it actually without having NACRA on board, because now we are bringing them on board. Because you have to provide upon application, your application has to be linked with your NIN number. Once you have your NIN number, we are not going to have the time now to ask you, go and bring your ID, go and bring your photos, you know, go and bring your... So, all of that is in the system. Right, we have it in this. So we can process your application, you know, in record times, you know, without having further delays. Yeah. So in Sierra Leone, let us also remember that we have commonalities in names, common names. Fatmata Kamara, you have 10 Fatmata Kamaras. But then if you have your name, you can never have the same name numbers, right? So, and we've been having experiences where in 10 Fatmata Kamaras, you can have this result, Fatmata Kamara. So you'll be constrained to actually determine who actually owns this result. But with this system now, it becomes easier for us to identify because you have different name numbers. Even if you are identical twins, you have different name numbers, and your pictures, well, will be there, but the name numbers are not the same.
But currently, even when people are going for, when you apply for university, you are being asked to provide your name number. So, what's the difference with this new system?
Yes. Now we are asking for their name numbers. Yes, on the phone. We are asking for their name numbers. So now we're going to digitalize it at central level. It used to be at collegiate level, university level. Now we're going to do it as centralized. It has to be a centralized system.
So, are you going to bring all of the universities together, put them in one pot, be it private or public?
We are going to have a centralized system at national level. The office is going to be domiciled at the Ministry of Technical Higher Education, because we are doing it still at collegiate level, university level, but there are still challenges. So those are we want to actually be in the position to be able to surmount those challenges by profiling the best options, for efficiency, effectiveness of the system, so that Sierra Leoneans will actually have the best service from the university.
So Mr. Momo, educationists over the years, they've seen that our system, education system itself is good, but some of the criticisms that usually comes that when we go to other countries, we take some of their prototypes, we just come and then put it here. We don't try to localize or look at what can be applicable in the Sierra Leonean context. This thing that you want to comment is very huge. So let's talk about the Sierra Leonean context. Have you taken into consideration all of the challenges, all of the things that should occur before thinking about saying, okay, let's come and put the system?
Well, so that's the reason why we are having engagement, we're having discussions, We're not going to implement it now this year. It has to be the next academic year. We're going to continue engaging people. We have to look at we have to actually proffer solutions as to co-create solutions as to how we can handle those problems. So we are taking our time. We want to actually give the best to Sierra Leoneans. The Ministry of Technical Higher Education, the Honorable Minister, Dr. Hajara Matulayo, is very much passionate about this. That's the reason why she has been having engagement. In fact, she went to cabinet with a position paper, and that she secured the cabinet approval. But then we're going to ensure that it works out for Sierra Leoneans the best, that Sierra Leoneans should have in terms of processing application forms, in terms of admissions, and that kind of thing. Yeah.
So you can agree with me that there is a challenge with regard to sustainability of some of these ideas. You see very beautiful ideas, but the sustainability is a serious challenge. I still continue to refer to the portal system that these universities use, and now there's a challenge with regards that. What in the area of assurance with regards to sustainability, how would you assure members of the public that this centralized admission system will be sustainable and will curb most of the challenges that is faced in the education sector?
The Ministry of Communication is part of this engagement as well. In terms of sustainability, actually we are taking all of those factors into consideration. How are we going to sustain this process? But be assured, let's say Ghanaians be assured that once we start, actually we ensure that it's sustainable. Yeah? We are actually exploring all avenues to ensure that we give the best to Sierra Leoneans when it comes to admission, when it comes to processing of the application forms. Because there has been a situation wherein you see people with the same results. If I am Mohamed Kamara with the face of a female applicant, if I am Fatmata Kamara with the face of the male applicant, all of those things, what are the problems were actually being caused by secondary schools or by WAEC and that kind of things. But this system will actually, be able now to handle, to address all of those, So we are actually considering a lot those challenges that they have, and then we are co-creating solutions, as to how to address them.
Mr. Momo, when you are talking, it's as if it's going to happen smoothly. And we know that we currently have internet challenge. And what you are talking about, it is a very big data set, getting data, all of those things. And we know usually when there is a mad rush, even in the decentralized systems, there are times when universities or even WAEC, when it's time for people to process certain things or put, they'll tell you the system is down. Because when there is this mad rush, there is traffic on the line. So with this big data set and with the current challenge that we have with the internet, what is the possibility? Because all of these I'm looking at. We should explore all of these things.
There are a lot of apprehensions I can understand, you know, that well, because of this internet stuff and that kind of thing. But then, before this time, we used to have what paper application. But then we move on to digital, and that is what we are now going online application. Yes,
but
there
are still
challenges, but not as much as you know, just for some time. But then I've told you, we'll continue to engage to ensure that those challenges that we are now experiencing will be surmounted when we start implementing this centralized admission system proper. That's the reason why I said initially that we are not starting it now. We want to actually find solutions. We have to address it. How we are going to ensure sustainability. So we're working on it. We're going to continue having engagement, sensitization, which is why I'm here. You know, I'll be other radio stations will be also engaging me. So it's part of public sensitization. We've had stakeholders consultation, even community stakeholders within the university communities. We've engaged them.
Okay,
so a lot of other people have been engaged.
So on this,
the parents are on board.
So on this high-level stakeholders engagement that you held on this CAS system, so what were the feedbacks from these stakeholders with regards to the system?
Well, a delay in the processing of application forms, you know, commencement of the academic year, but we can understand, you know, because if the WAEC that is in charge of conducting national examinations, you know, if there is a delay in the publication of results, that will affect the academic calendar of the universities. Because if we are to start, if our universities are to start in October, and there is delay in the publication of the result, we are not going to start processing those application forms, you know, until the results are released. So that is the reason why we are now saying, bring your continuous assessments from SS2. If you are actually on a good footing from SS2, your continuous assessment is good. Highly likely possible that you will excel in that in the WAS examination. So we start looking at you at SS2 when you have all of your information in the system. So by the time you write the West African examinations, then we'll know that this person, yes, of course, no doubt, you can be admitted. But if you cannot be admitted, we have other options. Of course, it's going to be two options. One, first option in the university, say for example, University of Sierra Leone, the second option, Jala University and that kind of thing. So if you're not admitted there, you can be admitted there. Just as in the Beckenau, two schools, the options. So we're going to employ all of those names, you know, in the admission process.
So Mr. Momo, this particular system that you are bringing in, is it coming as a guise to force universities to go with the preferred requirements, the standard requirements for programs? For example, you know, if someone should go for degree, he or her should have 5 credits. If diploma, you talk about 4 credits, but you know, there are some universities that have some systems where maybe they will say, okay, you do this or that. Is it as a guide for you guys to really put it to universities that, oh, you should go with this standard requirement by force?
That is the reason why we are not actually forcing the universities. All of us, we are having engagement with them, you know, because they are part of the system. I told you, Senate is the highest academic decision-making body. There is no way we can implement this without the engagement of the vice chancellors and principals, who are chairmen of their respective senate, and also other senators, academic staff in the universities. They are also part of it. So we all sit together, we engage. Of course, if the requirements are there, that you're supposed to have 5 credits for you to be admitted for engineering, for example, you must have that 5 credit. 5 credits with an aggregate of 10, 5 credits with an aggregate of 8. So the preferred choice will be the one with 8. Before we could consider the 10. Probably you cannot be admitted at University of Sierra Leone, but you can be admitted at Addis Ababa University of Science and Technology. So we are all having this discussion together. It's not about actually enforcing it. The Vice Chancellor that pays.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just with us on the program is the Director of Higher Education, Emmanuel J. Momo Esquire. He has been taking us through as the Minister of Technology and Higher Education held a stakeholder engagement on the implementation of Sierra Leone's proposed centralized admission system. The program is Good Morning Sierra Leone, live on the Sierra Leone Broadcasting Corporation. You can be part of the program by sending your thoughts or comments on our Facebook page at SRBs.SL or send a comment on the number displayed on your screen. We'll move on to another issue. The Sierra Leone Water Company was established in 2001 with the mandate of providing portable water supply services to 6 provincial towns in the country. Under the Salwako Act of 2017, the mandate was extended to provide water and sanitation services to 4 regions of the country: North, Northwest, East, and South, which accounts for an estimated 5.6 million people, representing 80% of the country's population, according to the 2015 census. The company currently provides pipeline water supply services to a total of 12 towns, namely Bo, Kenema, Makeni, Lunge, Cambia, Lunsal, Maboka, Mile 91, and Yonibana, Potloko, Kabala, Pujon, Kainam. The current Managing Director, Engineer Tideni Awa Jabi, was appointed and approved by Parliament in November 2025. She is the first female MD in Salwako. Engineer Jabi is the first female engineer appointed by the Goma Valley Water Company, Sierra Leone's first female water engineer, and the first female director of planning, research, and operations at the National Water Resources Management Agency, among many other achievements. We're in the studio to talk more on achievement. We have the first engineer, the first managing director of the Sierra Leone Water Company, Engineer Awa Jabi. Good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning.
Your profile has a lot of first and first and first. Anyway, congratulations on your appointment.
Thank you.
So, what has the six months been so far for you as the first female Director General for Salwako?
Well, the first 6 months has been a mix of challenges and successes, so it's been tough.
Okay, so take us through your achievements so far in 6 months.
Well, as you rightly said, firstly, I just want to elaborate again on what Salwako does. So Salwako's mandate is to ensure the provision of potable water supply and its related sanitation services. I say related because when you say sanitation, it's a broader thing, and there are health sanitation aspects, so water-related sanitation to provincial areas of Sierra Leone. So upon assumption of office in November 2025, I firstly carried out an extensive organizational assessment. That assessment was done in order to help me to know what is the current status of Salwako in terms of what are the challenges, what are the opportunities, and what the threats that are there, and also what are the successes that Salwako had recorded. So it was kind of a diagnostic analysis to enable me understand the technical and strategic reality of Salwako, and also to be able to see how we could progress from that. So the first thing that I observed was that Salwako had deviated from its primary mandate, which was the provision of water supply and sanitation services, and rather was more oriented towards project implementation, which is a developmental initiative that should feed into what it is existing for. So that backed the vision of saying that we want to transform Salwako into a functional, when I say functional, it operates like a water utility company should operate, and also a financially viable institution. So we want to see that we, can be financially prudent and can be able to manage the institution.
So when you say Salwako deviating from its primary mandate as a water utility company, so just executing projects, I want you to put it into context, because many people will say for Salwako to do some of the work that it is doing is as a result of this project that Salwako is getting. So when you say over the years Salwako deviated from this primary responsibility that it was set up for.
Yes, so when I say it deviated from its primary mandate, the mandate of Salwako is to ensure it provides water supply and its related sanitation services. In the provision of that service, you focus on distribution of water to the people. You focus on commercialization. Water utility operations basically has two aspects. One, making sure that water is made available to the people through pipe-borne supply or through decentralized systems or schemes that you can put in place, maybe through tanks or standpipes. And also ensuring that we know that water is a social good, but we're now moving towards letting people know that water is not just a social good, but also an economic good. So you have to pay for services, because the whole process in making the people get the water, we have to treat the water. Firstly, we take the water from the sources, the rivers or the groundwater through boreholes, and then we process it. So it has a whole technical aspect of processing it, which incurs financial implications. And taking this water through pipes to ensure it reaches the consumers, these infrastructure also incurs costs. So there's a commercialization aspect where we apply tariffs, we bill the customers, we collect the revenue, and that revenue is what we use to ensure that we operate. So when I say the primary mandate, that is what I'm talking about, the technical and the commercial aspect. However, when I say they had deviated to just focusing on projects, yes, project brings the infrastructure, but what is sustainability beyond the infrastructure implementation? You have to make sure you run the systems and you focus on sustainability, yeah? So when I say they deviated, yes, we're just doing projects, but we're not looking beyond the project. So everybody wants to go just to say, oh, we have project, we implement. And that has made Dono frowned at Salwako over the years, because these projects are being implemented, but how are they sustained beyond the implementation phase? A lot of money had gone into that. So that is why I said we need to realign again our focus. Project is a developmental initiative. It is good, but how do you sustain them beyond? So that is why I said they had deviated. So now we want to function as a water utility company again, whereas we also pay attention of being a financially viable institution. So like you were asking, that assessment focused on that. That is one of the things that I quickly did to understand what Salwako is about and how we could ensure sustainable organizational performance and development.
Okay,
So after that assessment was done, it birthed what we called short-term recommendations and quick wins recommendations. One of the quick win recommendations based on the observation that also came out of the assessment was that Salwako, in its revenue generation drive, has not been too effective with it. Salwako has 10 operational stations currently. You mentioned all of those in your opening statement, save for Kabbalah. Kabbalah is still in process to ensure water supply is restored. So 3 of these stations, which we call the big stations, Bo, Kenema, and Makeni, were using a form of digital billing system, but it was not too effective. And then the 7 smaller stations were using manual Excel spreadsheets. We all know the implications of that. There was no accountability with revenue generation efforts. There was no transparency, and nothing was credible. A lot of revenue leaks. So we quickly put together what we call an integrated revenue management system. We call it the Smart Commercial Management System, that now brings together all our commercial data into one place. That allows us to make informed decisions. It has enhanced transparency, accountability, and also reduce leaks, because you cannot eliminate it completely. That has been minimized. And we have seen that effect in our revenue generation efforts. Revenue has gone up by 15% by just putting that system in place. So that is one of the achievements that we recorded and was a short-term, a quick win fix. Another one is we put together a 5-year strategic development plan for Salwako. The observation from the assessment also revealed that Salwako had no strategic direction since its last strategic plan expired in 2022. So interventions have been done predominantly prior to my assumption of office on an ad hoc basis. So more reactive than being proactive. So people will just come say, oh, there has been no water supply in so and so area, we need to improve that, rather than going from a planned and informed perspective. So we've put together a 5-year strategic development plan for the period 2026 to 2030 that will enable Selwaco to ensure effectiveness with its service delivery, whilst at the same time support government of Sierra Leone with its attainment of its national development agenda and commitments for meeting Sustainable Development Goal 6 by 2030.
So what makes this plan different from previous strategic plans? Because I'm quite sure Salwako had previous strategic plans, and yet there is a challenge with regards access to pipe-borne water in the capital.
So like I said, the last strategic plan of Salwako expired in 2022. Since the expiration of that plan, there had been no strategic direction. Interventions had been done on an ad hoc basis. So when I came in, I said, look, we have to look from a planned perspective in order for us to deliver. So this plan now focuses on 5 thematic areas. Firstly, institutional strengthening. Because if we want to make sure that we are effective, we need to have the enabling environment, the appropriate structures, systems, and processes to ensure that as staff, internally, we could deliver. The second thematic area focuses on infrastructure development. Now you mentioned that Salwako covers about 80% of the population. That is huge. If we're to ensure that SDG 6, which is water and sanitation for all by 2030 is achieved, Salwako plays a crucial role in ensuring that Sierra Leone fulfills its commitment. So currently we're challenged, we only cover about 23% of the rural population. So you can see 80 out of 23, 80% of, the whole countries or the provincial population. It's just like, a tip, in the pond. So that's why our second thematic areas focuses on infrastructure development. We want to see how we could put in place sustainable water supply and its related sanitation interventions that will help us improve on the current systems and also expand our coverage areas to rural communities that are currently deprived. The third thematic area focuses on commercialization of water supply services. Now, the vision that we're running with is that we want to transform Salwako, into a functional and financially viable institution. We all know the effect of donor fatigue. Even government of Sierra Leone now is frowning at us that you've been in existence for quite some time. If even you cannot, generate revenue such that you make profit, but at a cost recovery basis, you should be able to meet your operational cost. So we're trying to put together appropriate commercialization frameworks and systems that will help us enhance on our revenue generation efforts. The fourth thematic area speaks to infrastructure protection and management. Now, most of our systems are in isolated areas. When I say isolated areas, hard to reach areas outside of the township. Obviously, due to technical reasons that if you have a treatment plant or the source, you don't want to put it close within the communities to avoid issues of pollution and contamination. So it's mostly in isolated areas. And we've been having issues of vandalism. People go and vandalize these systems. So we want to make sure that we protect and manage these systems for sustainability, even for asset life cycle management issues. And then the fifth one speaks to capacity development and management. So what is this trying to say? Mostly modern management does not only speak now to return on investment. We have what we call return on talent. How do I ensure that I capacitate my staff and I have returns on that talent in a sustainable manner? Because mostly you train people and they leave. It's a loss to the company. So we want to put together a framework that will enhance staff capacity and manage this knowledge. So that is another achievement that we've recorded in the first 6 months. Another one is we're currently reviewing our act. Yeah. So we want this act. The act gives us the enabling legal environment to work and ensure we deliver effectively. Okay. So we want to revise this act, and then after we devise appropriate regulatory instruments that will enable us function properly and deliver on our mandate. So we reflect current sector realities across the provincial.
Continue to stay with us on the program. She is Tidini Awa Jabi, and she is the managing director of the Sierra Leone Water Company, and she has been taking us through her 6 months in office as the first female managing director for Salwako. Well, we take a health tip of today, and today we look at bipolar 1 versus bipolar 2. What is the difference? With many of the same characteristics, it can be difficult to tell the difference between bipolar 1 and bipolar 2. But there are some key differences in these mood disorders. Here is how to tell the difference. Let us watch on them.
Bipolar disorder affects nearly 6 million adults in the U.S. The chronic mood disorder causes intense shifts in someone's mood, energy, and behavior, far beyond your typical ups and downs. If you or someone you love has bipolar disorder, you may have heard a healthcare provider use the terms bipolar 1 or bipolar 2. So what's the difference between these two common types of bipolar disorder? Depression is common in both types. You may lose interest in things you enjoy, feel hopeless, or struggle to get out of bed. For those with bipolar 2, depressive episodes often last longer, sometimes more than 2 weeks, and may feel more intense than bipolar 1. The key difference lies in mania. Only people with bipolar 1 experience mania, periods of high energy, racing thoughts, or a sense of invincibility. This can lead to risky behaviors like overspending, gambling, and reckless driving. Some may even experience psychosis, which can include delusions or hallucinations. People with bipolar 2 experience hypomania instead. These periods aren't as extreme as manic episodes. You may feel unusually happy or energetic, but not experience the delusions or hallucinations that are common with mania. Between mood episodes, many people experience euthymia, a return to their baseline mood. These periods of normalcy can happen in both bipolar 1 and bipolar 2. While both types of bipolar disorder can significantly disrupt someone's life, people with bipolar 1 tend to have a hard time maintaining relationships or remaining employed. It can be more difficult to treat bipolar 1 and may require hospitalization since manic symptoms can be dangerous. In bipolar 2, hypomania episodes may not impact someone's life as much, but that means bipolar 2 is often misdiagnosed as depression. Treatment for both bipolar 1 and bipolar 2 is often a combination of medication and therapy, but it's common for people with either type of bipolar disorder to have trouble sticking with their treatment program. Bipolar disorder is lifelong, but it's also manageable. With the right care and support, many people lead healthy, fulfilling lives.
Well, I hope you've learned a lot from that video that talks about bipolar 1 versus bipolar 2. And we go over to another issue that has to do with the protection of consumers. The National Consumer Protection Commission of Sierra Leone has concluded a stakeholder engagement on the Consumer Protection Act 2020. The engagement, which attracted several key stakeholders and partners, discussed consumer rights, fair trade practices, and measures to combat fake, substandard, and expired goods. Participants highlighted the need to strengthen consumer protection systems and increase public awareness of the rights and responsibilities under the law as part of efforts to promote fair and safe markets. In the studio, we have been joined by the Communications Official, National Consumer Protection Commission of Sierra Leone, Rashford Hamilton. Good morning and welcome to Good Morning Sierra Leone.
Good morning.
Rashford, the Consumer Protection, the Act created the institution since the Act was passed in Parliament in 2020, and the institution has been around for some time. But as a consumer, still I see expired goods, and nothing is being done. There is no, I would say, the consumer protection is not that much proactive. And also I see, my right being trampled upon as a consumer. And always you guys who stakeholders, engagement stakeholders, people say, what are these guys made for? What were they created for when they have legal instruments to do certain things to protect our rights?
Okay, in the first place, as you said, nothing has been done. I want to debunk that of your statement. The reason is because mainly the reason why we're doing this awareness, if someone is not aware or is not of the knowledge that a particular something is in establishment, then you see it without even knowing that, oh, I should use this mechanism for complaints and the rest of it. Again, I believe if anyone in such situation should have contacted the commission, then you will have seen that action will have been in place. So since the act in 2020, which is the Consumer Protection Act, the commission came into establishment in 2023. So since then, of course, you know, setting up a new body is a very difficult something. So the commission has been in the position of setting up the head office in Freetown, and then also we have office in Makeni, in Poloko, in Cambia, in Falabako, in Adugu. We also have in Makeni, we have in Bo, we have in Kenema, and then of course we're planning to go beyond that. But again, with all what we're doing, it involves cost. Yeah. So now, when this act is in place, so many Sierra Leoneans are not aware of it. Now, the reason why we're having this stakeholders engagement within, especially the northeastern region, you see, mainly when we talk, people will hear it, but it will just pass by. But when you have authority in whom they believe, right, if that information is coming directly from them, you hear people saying, Chief be don't say, yeah, or this is coming from the council. It's a way of them having more belief directly because of their engagement with those people. So now it's upon that base, the commission thought it fit that, okay, yes, we're disseminating information through social media and then using TV and radio. But again, it will be good or better if we involve these stakeholders for them to be partners, because if they are partners, then the information can go easily. So now, since the commission has come into establishment since 2023, I'll tell you one thing: there has never been a complaint about the right of a consumer being trampled upon that the commission has not yet given a redress onto. Because again, we have a complaint system wherein if you just see it and then say it without complaining to the commission, then we will not be aware of it. Same also, some people will go, oh, just to social media, oh, I bought this thing from this particular shop and this, and then not even complaining to the commission, right?
So is that not a clue for the commission to look into that particular issue?
Yes, so again, we bring our attention to it. But again,
there should be a formal complaint.
Yes, because the act gave the commission, because without the formal complaint, we cannot take further action. Meaning, for example, let's say you have an issue with a particular product. If you bring in a formal complaint, the first procedure we do, we have our complaint officers. You have to receive the complaint from you, after which, within 14 days period, then we have to do background check. Again, because the reason why we don't just jump into action like that, because some people we know within Sierra Leone, some people will give you information just because they have an issue with the next person.
So, Mr. Hamilton, how often does the commission has complaints from? Because considering people have better things to do than to come and go through a long process of lodging a complaint with regards their consumer rights being trampled upon. How often do you get complaints from members of the public? Okay,
so by month basis, we have up to 10-15 complaints. The thing is, as you're saying, people do not have time. But again, if the act is stating that that's the way we're supposed to go, we cannot go contrary. Because if we do, again, we're violating the same act which we meant to protect. Again, when the drafters of this act were drafting it, they have the reason why. Because the reason why, as I was about to say, because we reach at a particular point. If you make a complaint of a particular business, and then we happen to get back to that business and say, okay, we need to see you on this particular date at this particular time at the office for so and so complaint being put in place as against your business. Because there's one thing about when we're talking about the law, you must listen, which is the complaint, and also you must have a respond. So when that person makes the response, come back to the commission, and then in that regard, if we look at it, because we have what we call the dispute resolution committee. That committee now is in place, wherein the complaint is formal, and then this business person will come and say, oh, I'm not the one, or trying to debunk whatever statement or whatever allegation is being laid as against them.
So Mr. Hamilton, in a scenario where a certain product is causing harm to members of the public, then a certain individual just comes to social media and posts, okay, I ate so and so and it's disturbing my tummy, or it has killed my child and blah blah blah. Will the commission sit and wait for the person to come and do a formal complaint without looking into it, because your act says you should only walk by when someone makes a complaint to the commission?
No. So in that case, what we do, for example, because we have people we call intelligence officers. So what they normally do, when we know that a particular product is having that kind of issue and it's making round on social media, what we do, we send intelligence officers for them to know who is actually coming with that particular product. After which, then the next process that we will do now, we will try to write them to come to the commission. But in the case wherein an individual, is having an issue with a particular business, that's what I was talking of in the aspect of coming to make formal complaint. Because there is a point wherein we reach, we have to go to court. Because now you cannot just go to court like that. But the process of you making a formal complaint is a form of an evidence to show that, oh, the commission is not having a bad blood as against this business person. So at what you're saying now, in that case, we bring the business person again to the table and say, okay, you are the one bringing XYZ to Sierra Leone. What is the issue? Similarly, so there was a time wherein a particular company, I will not call the name, it was making name on social media that they have a particular product that is expired. So what we did, because we also depend on whistleblowing, and we're working with CSOs. So when we have this information, what we do now, we inform this particular business to come to the commission. When they're there, after the meeting, because in that meeting now, we'll ask questions, and then if by the response of that particular individual, for example, some people are bringing, let's say, Pampers, and we know they are bringing this particular one. Maybe they will say, oh, no, we are not the one bringing this, so it seems as if another person is bringing the same product.
How often do you engage CSOs? Because I could vividly recall we hosted a guy here from, I think it was Consumer Protection Council, and they made mention of they saw expired ethanol at Waterkey, and they wrote several letters to the commission for you to speak up with regards to that issue, and the commission was silent. Okay, so in regards to the ethanol, that was one of the things what I will not call a company, as I said. So what happened with that ethanol? That ethanol was sitting there since 2021 before even the establishment of the commission. Some of these CSOs are rogues. What am I saying? Now, for example, they will come to your business place and then they will see something that is actually wrong to be there or expired, as the case may be, and then for them, no sooner you give them some amount of money, they will go. Then they will come again some other time. So was the commission not aware of that ethanol that was at Waterkey?
No, we only get information about it.
But it was all over social media.
Yes, we only get information about it. In 2025, it was in November, December. We took immediate action to it.
But there was no statement from the commission.
Yes, when you're investigating, you don't just come and give statements. Then at the end of the day, you have to go back again and say, oh, what I said earlier was wrong and this. Because again, the thing is here, we are not here also to destroy people who are doing the business.
So is the investigation still going on? Because we have not had anything since that ethanol was found down the key.
Okay, again, after which the results we had in it, because again the case was transferred from the commission. What we did, because ethanol is a product that is flammable, and then we have bodies that are responsible in that regard. So after which we get it right from the particular business that, oh no, we are not using this ethanol for any business purposes. It's actually in our storage, and because the ethanol has lost its actual value, because I think ethanol is supposed to be 60 above in whatever value, those who know about the chemistry aspect. So after which they came and said, no, it's now no longer at 60, it's below that. So our recommendation was, one of which we call EPA, the Ministry of Health also, right? And in that meeting, what was held out of that meeting was for this ethanol to be disposed. But again, the producers who normally produce this hand sanitizer, they said they can use it for particular purpose of hand sanitizer production. In that regard, what we did as a commission, because what we did initially, we make sure that it was separated from what is in the storage, the expired ones. They took it to another location around Grafton. So what we did, we hand over those ones that were transferred to the Ministry of Health, because they were saying they're going to use it, some laboratory, for them to create some sanitizer what. So that's what happened in the regard of that ethanol product.
Okay.
So Rashford, going forward, how robust will this your sensitization be, or engagement with the ordinary citizens, and with regards them coming out, putting out formal complaints to you, and that has to do with expired products or substandard products, because they are all over, especially for those people who cannot afford that much. Especially when you look at these medicines, when you go inside those vehicles, you see people just, all of these things.
Okay, so again, as what you say, the thing is this, as a country, we have so many acts, and those different acts give different bodies the operation. So yes, we care about consumers. That's why we have a partnership with the pharmacy board. But now when it comes to pharmaceutical products, we cannot go in depth because we are not the experts in that regard. So whenever we have shirts, what we do, we call pharmacy board and bring them to the notice that, okay, XYZ is this issue. So when it comes to the area of expiration, then of course that one will make an official statement to especially the business people that, okay, what we do in this regard, we have to close your business for this moment until the investigation is at the end, then we will have a result. Yeah, so we're doing that in between, and that's why we work with, of course, this Standards Bureau. We have an MOU with them. We also have a MOU with that of the pharmacy board and other different, even local content. The reason why we have in this one, because when these acts are being placed, we have what we call the crisscross area, wherein you have to come, you do a particular something, I will have to come and do a particular something. So it's in that regard mainly, when we try, all we do is we try as best to protect the consumers. Okay. But sometimes if we go beyond, then here comes the problem. It looks as if two institutions are fighting against one thing.
Okay, so
yes.
Thank you very much. He is Rashford Hamilton, the Communications Officer, National Consumer Protection Commission of Sierra Leone. We still have with us Engineer Tindeni Awajabi. Engineer, you've articulated the issues and your achievements, the opportunities, and to an extent that someone out there, if even they don't want to agree, it's okay, start shaking their heads. So, in the next 6 months or in subsequent years that you'll be there as head, what's next? What should Sierra Leoneans out there in those provincial areas expect from Salwako?
So firstly, like I stated, we now have a strategic direction which we're running with. We have a vision to transform Salwako into a functional and financially viable institution. So from these strategic plan, we extract what we call our operational or annual work plan on a yearly basis. So for the next 6 months, we have interventions that we want to put in place. Basically, the interventions for this year are focusing on what we call recovery interventions, because we want to recover. We take cognizance that Salwako has been behind. It has a lot of challenges. We want to recover. Within the year 2027 to 2028, we have what we call the reform impact visibility stage. So we want to see how reforms we're doing will start to take impact. You understand?
So as a journalist, quickly, as a journalist, if I'm going to the provinces, because you said the next 6 months is recovery, what should I look out for when I go to your facility to see?
So look out for knowing that this is no longer business as usual. We've shifted the culture now to ensure that we know that we're serving our customers. So we're rebranding. Yeah, you'll start to see things out there that you go to the offices, people are trying to now be effective in their work, be professional. There are interventions that are being put in place. Our toll-free line will be active within the next 3 weeks or so maximum, because we've made progress with Orange. We're now trying to put, you can reach us readily now. Very soon our service charter will be out there to let people know what we are. So we want to be accountable, and there are interventions that I told you we call the short-term interventions that we're putting in place. We have critical projects within Kabbalah. You spoke about Kabbalah. I told you Kabbalah was down, but by November 2026 we want to commission that and make sure water supply is restored in Kabbalah. We want to improve on the coverage of Makeni. We also have, a huge number of customers there. So that also.
So about the capital city, because you're busy talking about Kabbalah.
Which capital city?
Freetown.
So Salwako is not in Freetown. We operate in the provincial areas. Guma Valley Water Company is responsible for water supply within Western area. So we are basically there for the provincial areas.
Okay, so thank you very much, engineer. When I'll be going to the provinces, I will look around to see for myself. Then I will report the good and challenges.
Of course, challenges are inevitable.
And be ready to talk to us, because when we go to, we want to get your side to see all
the
of these
doors will be always
achievements
open, because we're now looking at how we want to be accountable.
Okay.
Because accountability helps us to improve.
Okay, so thank you very much. It's good. It's nice talking to you.
So we move on to another segment of the program and look at a review of our local tabloids. The first speaker I have here this morning is the Daily Mail newspaper, and its banner headline states, "Meeting with First Bank CEO President Bio 6 large-scale infrastructure and development financing. Chief Minister holds successful town hall in the United Kingdom. Moise ECSL to sign MOU on electoral transparency and public trust." These stories and more you can find on the Daily Mail newspaper.
And the first one I have here is the Cambui Times newspaper, and it says, as transformation continues within SLP, IGCL sets to commission 3 major projects. As Sierra Leone gradually prepares for the 2028 multi-tier elections, can APC give DIB a trial? These stories plus more you find in the Cambui Times newspaper. Awareness
Times newspaper banner headline says, as MPs approve security veteran turned politician SLPP Sobula to control light weapons and arms. These stories and many more you can find on the Awareness Times newspaper.
And the next one I have here is the new numbered newspaper that says, President Bio calls for African leadership grounded in resilience and reform. Mines Minister talks tough. These stories plus more you find in the new numbered newspaper.
Africa 24 Communications newspaper banner headline says, fishing communities use wharves as a toilet. Honorable Abdul Karim Kamara quotes, well, brutal FGM initiation aim Sierra Leone condemns. This story is you can find on the Africa 24.
And the last and final one I have here is the Concord Times newspaper that says, Sierra Leone back on global cocoa coffee map. Dr. Ibrahim Bangura, a leader who listens and understands everyone, deaf among 6, facing murder charges at High Court. Well, this story plus more you find in the Concord Times newspaper. Viewers, we must remind you that the views read there, they do not reflect the views of the SLBC. Rather, we are merely reviewing the headline.